Well, hello everyone, and welcome on this dark and rainy day to the Gray Wave add-on for Minecraft that we're going to be talking about today in today's video. So this is an add-on that's essentially a tower defense add-on, and we'll go into how it works in just a little bit. But what this was a add-on jam that the Bedrock Add-ons Discord, which you'll find a link to in the description below, that a number of folks put together a bunch of different add-on jams and different types of cool projects that you can go see in the Discord. And, well, this was my entry, a simple tower defense mod that you can add on to your Minecraft world inside of Minecraft. And what you can really see here is there's this concept of Gray Wave, which, I don't know, you can think of it as like a concept of magnetism or something like that. But what it really does is it powers these turrets that you see here. So this, for example, is a crossbow turret, and this one is another crossbow turret, and you can see it is working against some zombies and some creepers. There's a more simple bow turret over here. Let's see, let me go give myself, there's other cool turrets. So there is a axe turret that I can go put in place, and this is more of a melee turret. If, you know, anything maybe gets super close, let's go put this one down. This will essentially give any baddies the axe as they walk by. There are other turrets. There's a fireball turret, and there's a shulker bullet turret. And basically the way that these turrets work is that they have to be within proximity and within visual distance of this thing right here, which is a Gray Wave generator. It generates the magnetism and those kinds of things. So for example, if I get rid of this, let me go get rid of this, you can see that all of these different turrets then sort of deactivate. So let me go give myself another one. Gray Wave generator like this. So alright, here we go. Let's go place another one of these down, and you can see that now all of these turrets will turn back on again, and they'll start firing at all the different baddies. So that's the way that this turret add-on works. There's a new block here called the Fabricator, and the Fabricator is how you can actually go ahead and craft all of these individual turrets. Now, one of the ingredients that you have to use to go build your turrets, in addition to, for example, a crossbow, if you want to build a crossbow turret, is you have to use something called Gray Wave. And Gray Wave is a new, or Gray Ore. Gray Ore is a new type of ore that's available, and you can see it up here. It's actually got a little bit of luminescence, maybe too much luminescence probably, but you can see that once you get that, you get a little bit of, let's see, you get a little bit of, let's see, you should get a little bit of gray ore, and that gray ore can be used in the Fabricator to go build things like Gray Wave generators. Of course, I'm in creative mode, so I can just give myself stuff, but in general survival gameplay, there's a number of different recipes that involve gray ore that you can go use to go build all those different types of turrets. Now, the turrets are pretty OP, or pretty robust against all the different mobs and those kinds of things. You can see it's doing a pretty good job of taking care of zombies, but one of the problems with Gray Wave is that it attracts waves of enemies that will come to try to take on all the different Gray Wave turrets. So you will probably see at some point a Gray Wave leader. Looks like a big giant zombie with big giant ears to go detect where all the Gray Wave is at, and they will come towards, and they will come for, to try to take out your turrets and your towers and those kinds of things. So it's not all just building OP turrets to take on different enemies. You do kind of get more trouble in the form of these Gray Waves that will come for you and come for your castles and your turrets and those kinds of things. And this add-on, probably isn't fully balanced as it could be. So it's probably pretty easy to maybe put a turret on a pedestal, and that will probably do a very good job of taking care of zombies and skeletons. But in this case, you can see that, well, my axe turret is placed in such a way that the baddies are going to get at it. But, it's just a simple experiment, and maybe adding a tower defense-like element to Minecraft. And you can maybe use it as some inspiration for the kinds of things that you want to go build inside of Minecraft. So let's talk a little bit about how this was built. So you can see all the different elements that come into the game in this screen right here, and it all starts with a gray ore block. That's the common ingredient for a lot of these gray wave items. The gray ore block is just another ore, kind of like coal or maybe iron or something like that. It's spread throughout the world using a feature and a feature rule, and it's something that you should see. In fact, we saw it just in the previous playthrough fairly seamlessly on top of a mountain, essentially. And what you can do with the gray ore block is you can then go build a fabricator. Now, the fabricator works like a crafting table in the sense that you can craft a specific set of recipes on top of it and using it. So one of the things that you can build is a number of different kits. So a turret kit is essentially a way to go place a different type of turret. A turret by itself is basically like an entity. So think of it as kind of like a mob that just happens not to move. But you can see that there's a number of different turret types that we have. We have a bow type, we have a crossbow type, which is a stronger, faster firing type of bow turret. We have an axe turret, which will basically swing around and attack melees and melee attack certain mobs within a range of it. There is a shulker bullet turret, and then there's a fireball turret that shoots fireballs and shulker bullets, well, respectively, for those types of turrets. Now, one of the things that will happen is in order for the turrets to actually activate and turn on and work, they have to be within proximity of a gray wave generator that provides them with the energy that they need in order to function. And the idea was that the generator will need to be a line of sight, so there can't be a wall, for example, between a turret and a gray wave generator if you want them to go ahead and work. So the gray wave generator, it's a fairly weak type of entity, so it's very easy for, like, let's say a skeleton mob to go hit and destroy. So you have to take care to protect your gray wave generators if you want your turrets to keep working over time. Now, as soon as you have a gray wave generator inside of the world, one of the problems that this brings with it is that it will spawn waves of mobs, including skeletons and zombies and those kinds of things, along with a gray wave leader that will come and actually try to attack things. And we'll talk a little bit about how we sort of have the waves work and those kinds of things, but they are attracted to the gray wave generator and they will try to destroy it. Now, if you actually happen to get rid of a gray wave leader, one of the things that they can loot is a depleted gray shard, and depleted gray shards can be used inside of your fabricator block along with some other common ingredients to produce emeralds. So there is a reward for building out a really nice fortress and dealing with waves of gray wave leaders and their associated mobs and zombies. So that's a little bit of how this add-on is put together. It's intended to be sort of an additive gameplay element to survival worlds. If you don't use the turrets, then you'll never see any gray waves, so it doesn't really change too much there. But if you do, there is an additional challenge that you have to fend off and those kinds of things. And it can just be fun to go design maybe a little bit of a castle with some turrets. And so let's take a deeper look at how this is all built. And really the star of the show is how the turrets work. And so right here, what I've selected is this JSON file that describes the crossbow turret, which is one of the turrets that you can actually go place inside of the world. So this is crossbow turret behavior.json. And one of the most interesting things here that we do, and probably one of the riskiest things that we do, is, well, we want to create a mob that the skeletons will attack, that zombies will attack, that all of the bad monsters inside of the Minecraft world will attack. And to do that, probably the foremost way to make that happen is to change the type family of your mob and set it up so that it has the actual player type family tag associated with it. Because if you look in, for example, the skeleton or the zombie and the way that their attack behaviors work, they are all primed to go look for things called quote unquote player and then go ahead and try to attack those and get rid of those inside of the world. So this is probably a little bit of a risky behavior because all kinds of things inside of Minecraft are triggered based on when you have a type family of player. So for example, one of the things I saw was that a lot of mobs will actually just look at the turrets because they are primed to have this behavior of looking at players inside of the Minecraft world. So you'll see a lot of, for example, frogs admiring the turrets that you have inside of the world because they, like I said, are primed to look at players. So this might have some buggy behavior associated with it, but this is also the primary way that we can have turrets, which are essentially your allies, get attacked by things like zombies and the like. Now, the other interesting thing that we do here is we declare a property called gray wave state, and state basically determines two real states, active or inactive. I had a third state called constructing, which was intended to be like a time period where the turrets would be under construction and so therefore inoperative, but I didn't really fully implement that. Really, they can only be active and inactive, and depending on their proximity to gray wave towers, tower, if there's no gray wave generator nearby, what will happen is they are in an inactive state and they basically don't work. But if they are active, then of course then they're turned on and then they do work. And you can see that there's a number of different events here, one called activate and one called deactivate, which basically turns on and sets this property from inactive to active appropriately, as you might expect, and adds these respective component groups called active or inactive to kind of change the way that the mobs work. And sure enough, what you can see here is that when a mob is inactive, there's no particular attack behavior associated with it, so really the tower kind of does nothing. But when it's in this active state, there's a ranged attack behavior, there's a look at target behavior, and there's a nearest attackable target behavior and a hurt by target behavior. Now, if you actually look at the turrets themselves, for example, if you look at their model design inside of Blockbench, you can see that basically the way these work is that the turret is just a base and the actual head is, the actual crossbow or bow, or in this case, this is a fireball cannon. So essentially, to have the turret when the turret is looking at something, basically it's pointing its, in this case, fireball cannon, or this fireball cannon at the particular target. So that gives you this kind of nice behavior that you'll know that the turret is active when it's actually looking at things or looking around and kind of actively moving and the like. One of the other things that I did about this model was to kind of do the modeling of it very quickly for the add-on jam. You have to work very quickly. One of the things I did was I just used this consistent texture across all of my different turrets, and I've got a number of different material textures here. I've got some wood, I've got some cobblestone, and I can just basically place UVs either on the wood texture or the cobblestone texture to kind of very quickly give them either a wood look or a cobblestone look without having to think about it too hard. So it's kind of a nice technique to kind of work very quickly if you just have this texture, so to speak, that has, a number of different materials inside of it, and then you can just place your UVs on whatever texture you want for that particular bone. That makes modeling it a lot quicker. So yeah, so you can see, coming back to the JSON file here, we have a number of different component groups, and essentially when it's inactive, it doesn't do anything, and when it's active, it will go ahead and make these kind of ranged attacks. Well, so how do turrets activate? Well, let's go take a look at some of the code over here. We've got a JavaScript function that's just called main, which tracks a set of ticks, and there's a class here called GrayWave Manager. In the GrayWave Manager, we have a number of helper functions, but what essentially happens is every so often, every 60 ticks, what we do is we process the gray wave that is around a player. As you probably know, inside of Minecraft, if there's no player nearby, nothing really happens inside of the world. So what we really want to do is do all of our activities based on the surrounding radius of a player, because that way we can actually do things like query for entities and the like to find entities that are sort of actively visible inside of the world that we can then go manipulate. And what this algorithm will do is it will basically do a entity query to go find all the nearby gray wave items, and we do this by querying for the gray wave family. And then what we do is we look at all the different gray wave items that are nearby to a player, and if this is a consumer, if this is a turret, one of the things that we're going to go try to do is just see where is its nearest connected generator. So we'll do another query to find, are there any nearby gray wave generators? Is there a line of sight between them? And if yes, let me go back up. Okay, over here. So basically, if there is a connected generator and if it's an inactive state, then what we're going to do is we're going to go trigger this event that actually turns that turret on essentially and makes it active. And we'll also play a sound, the beacon activate sound, but ideally I should have my own sounds for this, but I just leverage the beacon activate sound. But if a turret is active, but there's no nearby connected generator because maybe it got destroyed or something like that, then basically what we'll do is we'll turn that off. Couple of other things to check out. So let's see, what else is interesting? Well, so one of the things that we do here is that we have a very simple feature for placing gray ore, which is a custom block that we have inside of the world. And so this is just a very simple ore feature here that leverages how Minecraft will place collections of ore inside of the world. And in this case, we just have a very simple ore feature that can at some times replace some granite and andesite and stone. You might actually want to decrease this. You can see that there's also a feature rule here, which has a set of logic for where it should go place these things inside of the world. If you wanted to reduce the amount of gray ore that you saw inside of the world, you'd probably want to go decrease the set of iterations. In fact, maybe I'll go do that just to make it a little bit more rare inside of the world. So that's just a very quick overview of how this gray ore gets placed. There are a number of different turret kits here, which basically manifest ways to go place all of these different turret entities inside of the world. So a turret kit, essentially think of it as like a spawn egg, but it gives us more of an ability to customize that the spawn egg looks and feels and the way it works inside of the world, so we can actually write some script when this turret kit gets used to go actually place the turret inside of the world, and we can manage that process. So think of it as almost like a super spawn egg, but we basically have a turret kit for each one of the different types of turret kits that turrets that exist inside of the world, in addition to the gray wave generator. So that's just another thing. We have a number of different recipes for all the different combinations of, for example, an axe turret kit is made out of a little bit of gray ore, some iron ingot, and some stone, and and that's basically how that is all put together. A bow kit leverages a bow as one of its ingredients, so that's how that gets put together. And if you look at the README up on the GitHub, and I'll link into this in the description below, you'll see all the different recipes and ingredients that are used to create all the different items. Just coming back to the behavior for our crossbow turret, just the other thing that we put in place is that we want to make sure that these things don't move. So we set the movement value to 0 just to make sure that it doesn't move. We have the physics component. We also set the body rotation blocked component just to make sure that the turret doesn't like pivot or twist as it maybe turns to face its different types of attackers. And then the final thing that we did was there's a knockback resistance. Knockback resistance. We really cranked that up just so that as it gets hit by something, it doesn't necessarily bounce back from that, just to make sure that it like appears as if it's something that's set in stone that is unmovable. So that's a little bit about how that works. One final detail that we added into this was just the general idea that there's a little bit of a connection indicator and a health indicator that you can see inside of the model. So if we just come over to our model real quick, you can see that on the corners of this turret, there's 4 little pillars, and this is just a little semi-transparent, almost piece of glass that you can see. And what will happen is that as the health status of the turret, as it changes over time, you can see that it grows, that little piece of glass grows increasingly red, and there's a little bit more cracks that appear on top of the turret itself as it gets a little bit more wounded over time. And the way that that's actually implemented is, we have a number of different textures which just change the coloring for those pieces of glass and adds a little bit more of cracking detail on top of the texture. And if you look at the way that that's implemented from a JSON perspective, if we go over into the render section and then we actually go into this render controller that we share across all of our different turrets, you can see that we declare a damage levels texture over here, and then basically we have this algorithm, this Molang expression, which says that based on the overall health of the turret, and assuming that 250 is the maximum health, then essentially go clamp the value of that to a range between 0 and 4 to pick the different textures that exist for the damage levels. So that way you get a little bit of a health indicator that as these turrets get attacked and get damaged, you have a little bit of an indicator of how healthy they are all up, just based on how red that little light crystal, so to speak, in the corners of the turrets actually ends up being. So just a nice little detail, and it makes it easier to track how well your turrets are doing. Okay, so the final thing we want to show is a little bit of how Gray Wave hordes work. So you can see in our tick function, what we have here is every second, every 20 ticks, what we'll do is we'll consider whether to spawn a horde. And one of the things that we do is we track the last time we actually provisioned a horde into the world. So just to make sure that we don't provision them too often, create a whole bunch of mobs and flood the world with mobs. But what we'll basically do is look for all of the nearby turrets and the nearby generators. And if we haven't provisioned a horde in a while, what we'll then go do is actually go spawn a horde. Now, what this will then basically do is randomly generate a number of different mobs to go spawn. So you can see that it's going to have a set of different mobs that it's going to go spawn. Zombies, witches, skeletons, evocation illagers, and pillagers as all part of it. Oh, this is kind of a little bit of a bug. I should probably change this a little bit just so that, let's see, this algorithm actually works properly. Okay, well, now we fixed that bug. Okay, awesome. It's going to spawn a little bit more diverse mobs now that I've fixed that issue. And then what it's done, and actually after spawning, is it's going to go generate the next interval to actually go provision a horde. So it's planning in advance when the next one's going to go start. Now, one of the interesting things that you should see from this algorithm is that unfortunately inside of Minecraft, actually controlling the AI of a mob is actually kind of a hard thing to do. You can do it in the JSON through component groups to change different configurations of how the AI will work on its own, but you can't do something really easy like, for example, say, okay, I want this mob to go from this point to that point, or I want this mob to go try to attack this specific turret over here. So the problem is that we want to provision a horde off in the distance so that it will approach all of these different gray wave towers, but we want to make sure that it actually tries to approach those towers. And so one of the things that we actually do here is we actually provision a small little hard to see entity called Gray Wave in between the actual horde and the Gray Wave turret. And so think of this as almost like a trail of breadcrumbs, where what you're hoping is that the mobs will go try to attack all of these little Gray Wave particles that you can see inside of the world, and that will essentially lead them from wherever they get provisioned off in the distance over onto the actual turret, so that it actually works kind of like an attack that the horde is trying to do on top of the turret. Just because basically there's no other way to kind of really lead the mobs over to those turrets. So that's why you'll sometimes see a little bit of gray wave, these little particles inside of the world. That's a visible signal that the mobs are all using to go try to find out your turrets and then go attack them. So just a little trick that we do here to go provision these little gray wave particles at specific intervals to create a little breadcrumb trail to lead the mobs over into your turrets and your defenses. So that was just a very quick overview of the Gray Wave turret defense add-on for Minecraft, and you can see a little bit of how it was built. It's still in its very early stages. It's still very basic and not probably very well balanced, but hopefully you can get some inspiration for how to build your own additional gameplay elements that you can layer onto Minecraft worlds, or maybe a couple of techniques that are useful for the kinds of things that you're building. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll have more different types of small add-ons and techniques that we'll be bringing into Minecraft. Thanks for watching.